everyone, and welcome to the Foster Files, a podcast about animal rescue and welfare. My name is Kelly, and every week I talk about issues surrounding animals in this country and to the people who are passionate about making their lives better. Joining me today is Stephen Martinez, the Executive Director of the York County SPCA. Welcome, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. As I mentioned in some of our conversation, I have a history with York County SPCA. One of my dogs that unfortunately I lost a few years ago, Shane, my little Sheltie, I adopted from the York County SPCA. It was an incredible experience. And so I'm so happy to finally be having the York County SPCA on the program.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And Shane was the love of your life, I'm told. So we put a good one into your home.
You know, I joked all the time that if that dog could have crawled inside my skin, he would have. Like there
A
he
bit
was
clingy,
I
huh?
never had to like guess where he was because he was always in my blind spot. He was
Okay.
literally always there with me, would have followed me into a burning building. He was a Velcro dog for sure.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, they're our companions. That's why we love them so much.
They really are. They really are. So why don't you kind of let anybody who's listening know about the history, which is a long and rich history of the York County SPCA?
Okay. Well, so the history of the York County SPCA, we're actually celebrating our 100-year history this year, which is very exciting. So we started in
That's
1926.
amazing.
Yeah, we started in 1926, and in our 100-year history, we've only had three locations, like three buildings, which is crazy. And so the one that we're currently in is the one that you adopted from, which was built in
Mhm.
2006. And our mission, of course, is to find loving permanent homes for stray and displaced animals. We investigate and prosecute animal cruelty offenders, and we control the pet population growth rates through an aggressive spay-neuter program. And so we have at the York County SPCA about 450, actually it's 470 active and engaged volunteers. We have 65 employees, and we are in, like I said, the building that we've been in is we built in 2006, and it's about a 25,000 square foot building that houses all kinds of dogs and cats and other domesticated animals. And we have a spay neuter clinic and a medical wing and all these human service programs that are geared towards keeping people and pets together so those animals never have to be surrendered in the first place. So lots of exciting things happening.
I mean, even having, spent my teenage years in the York area,
Mhm.
having family there, and I remember when that building was built in 2006 because I was still in the area at that time. I had no idea how many volunteers and how large your staff was. I mean, that's a much larger operation than I realized.
Yeah, we're one of the largest shelters in Pennsylvania. And, when I first started, we took in 8,000 animals, which was quite a lot. And then now we've gotten our intake down to about 3,200, and about 2,700 animals. And some people think that, oh, you're taking in less animals, you're doing less work. But if you look at the number of pets and families that we've served, maybe not official take in, but those that we're touching and helping and supporting with resources, it's tens of thousands. And so we've really been focusing on investing in programs that support the whole family with staying united with their furry family member, right? And so that has reduced our intake and keep people and pets together and allowed us, and that means that we're able to pour more resources into the most vulnerable pets that need us the most. And so, yeah, now we intake about 2,700 animals, and have a really rich community cat program that is also trying to keep those cats in the community healthy and, of course, sterilized too.
About that because we haven't had an opportunity to talk to anybody that has knowledge about a community cat program, but it's my understand that they'll be maybe trapped, tagged, given maybe some health, vaccinations or something. I'm not sure, and then maybe spayed and neutered. Am I on the right track there?
So you just talking about our community cat program? Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Just curious about that.
Yeah, sure. So before I started, we didn't have a community cat program. And so the way that it worked is that people would find a stray cat, they'd bring it into the shelter. More often than not, that cat wasn't going to be a candidate for adoption because it was a stray. If it's a true stray outdoor cat, like you would say feral cat, that cat is not going to be a candidate for adoption. And so the only alternative was euthanasia, sadly, right? So when I first started, we had a 53% save rate, which meant that about half the animals that came in alive did not have a live outcome. And so when we started to implement our community cat program, what we were doing was advocating for what is going to give those cats the best chance at a live outcome. And so part of that program involves that if you find a stray cat out in the community, we call it a community cat, people would say feral, then people bring that to the shelter. What we'll do is we'll spay, neuter, vaccinate that cat, but then we'll return it into its outdoor home. That program is called Shelter Neuter Return. And so what that's doing is our goal is to fill the community with sterilized animals so that you reduce their population growth rates over time, but you're also, instead of intaking that cat with a very low likelihood of adoption and then euthanizing it, you're giving it a chance at a best live outcome, which is returning that cat into its outdoor home. So that's shelter neuter return. When somebody tries to surrender a cat as a stray to the shelter, instead of accepting it as a surrender, we'll spay, neuter, vaccinate, and return that cat from where they got it from. Trap neuter return is where people trap cats themselves, bring it to our spay neuter clinic, and then we spay, neuter, vaccinate those cats, and they return. Then they themselves do the transport, and we'll return those cats into their outdoor home. So that's trap neuter return. Just a little bit of a nuanced difference, but there is a difference. And so again, the way that you reduce population growth rates in a meaningful way is by filling the community with sterilized animals. If you just bring them to the shelter where we euthanize them because they're never going to be candidates for adoption, then the food, water, and shelter that were out in the community that allowed that cat to survive still remain. So then unaltered cats will move in and the cycle continues. So the best way, the only meaningful way to reduce their numbers in the long run, which is the only humane way of doing it, is by returning those sterilized animals back into their outdoor home. Now, the only time that we won't return a cat is if that cat came to us in bad shape. So if it was not thriving in its outdoor home, then we're not going to return it back to where it was found, because clearly that would be not the right thing to do for that animal. So in that case, and it's not going to be a candidate for adoption because it's a wild animal. So what do? In that case, you have a working cat program. So what we've done is we've identified people with barns or with breweries or warehouses or manufacturing locations. And so we have partnered with them, and they will let us bring these wild animals that were not thriving in their outdoor home, and they need a little bit of eyes on them and to be fed, and a little bit of shelter and a safer place for them to go. So we'll partner with those folks, and we'll return those animals to, after vaccinating and sterilizing them, we'll send them to a barn or to a brewery or to a warehouse or something like that, and so that they can still have a chance at a live outcome, a healthy, and still have a good quality of life. And we, and that, therefore we don't have, it's eliminating the need for euthanasia. So those would be, so examples of a community cat program are that's like an umbrella term that includes things like shelter neuter return, trap neuter return, working cat program. Another example is a kitten foster program. Those would be examples of community cat programs.
Yeah, I love that working cat program. I'm not remembering off the top of my head who I spoke to that had a working cat program. It might have been Animal Protectors of Allegheny Valley out here in my area. But I love that idea. I love that idea of these communities have a need, and they are, that whole barn cat thing has been going on for generations. Ever since there's been barns, there's been barn cats, right? And so giving them an opportunity to then participate by having sterilized animals in their barns, because they're going to have the cats in their barns no matter what, but now they're actually helping an animal, having a sterilized animal. It seems like kind of all the way around, it can be a positive impact.
Right. Yeah. And the reason why we use the term working cat is because that language is implying that the cat isn't a freeloader, right? It's actually providing a service to that farm, for instance, if it's in a barn. And so, maybe you have to let the cat crash in your barn, and maybe you feed it in the appropriate way, but it's going to provide rodent control for you in return for you feeding and housing that cat. So that's a working cat. He's actually earning his keep.
Right. I love that. So tell me a little bit about how you found the York County SPCA. I understand you have a background in a completely different field.
I do. Yeah. My background is pretty not traditional for a person who works in this field. So I'm originally from Oklahoma, and I went to Chicago for grad school, and I have an MBA and I have a business background. So I started up some companies and sold them, and went into venture capital, private equity. So we would invest in startup companies. It was very for-profit work is what I was in. But I met my wife in Chicago, and we hit this point in our career where it was like, this is going to be it forever, or we could make a change now before we got integrated into that lifestyle. And so we decided to make a lifestyle change, and she wanted to come back home. She's from central Pennsylvania. And so she wanted to go home, and I wanted to stay married to her. So I went to central Pennsylvania. And it was during that transition that I decided to rethink my career. And I thought I would go into nonprofit management and apply those skills that I learned in the for-profit world to the nonprofit sector. And I wanted to work for an organization whose mission I deeply believed in, which is, saving animal lives. And I applied for the job at the York County SPCA, and they hired me. And so I had never stepped foot in an animal shelter till the board of directors hired me to be the CEO of one. And so they took a real risk on me, thinking that my leadership skills and other qualities that I had that I could bring to the table would improve our life-saving outcomes. And sure enough, they have. So I appreciate that opportunity that the board gave me.
How long have you been with them now?
So I started in August of 2019. And so that will be almost 7 years now, or almost 7 years in.
And it goes by really fast.
It does, yeah. And our organization and the community has gone through a lot of transformation. Like our first 3-year strategic plan was about getting our house in order. We needed to improve our save rate from 53%. And so that was the first 3 years. And then the next 3 years was about sustaining our progress. And so we've just recently written our third 3-year strategic plan.
So what do you think were some of the key factors in improving that save rate? Because, the amount of animals in need, the amount of people in community that are maybe making some not great decisions or misinformed, or their lifestyle situation is changing. I doubt that has really changed in that area. So tell me a little bit about what you guys did differently to get that save rate up to where it is today.
Well, the first thing we did was get a hold of our data. So we wanted, we're a very data-driven culture. We want to make decisions that are rooted in data and that are informed and strategic. And so data is a great place to start. I remember back in 2019, I asked what I thought was going to be a simple question. And that question was, how do we know if we're doing a good job? That's it. How do we know if we're getting the job done? If I'm going to ask people to donate to us, I have a duty to demonstrate a return on that investment through impact. So how do we do that? What is our overarching measure of success? And back then I got a lot of different answers. I would get things like number of adoptions, number of spay neuter surgeries, number of vaccines we administered, the average length of stay of an animal, and on and on. And I was like, hold up, man. Donors aren't going to want to keep track of 100 different data points. They just need the one that is like the culmination of all of our work. Well, we didn't have an answer to that, what that measure of success was. So we did a research project, and that's how we landed on that concept of save rate. And save rate is a pretty easy, elegant mathematical equation. It says that of all the animals that come in alive into our care in a given year, in that same year, how many have a live outcome? That's it. It's animals in, animals out. We divide the number, we get a percentage, and that's save rate. And that's pretty easy to understand. And so when we ran the number back in 2019 and learned that we had a 53% save rate, that was a really difficult moment in our history, because it meant that we were only saving half the animals that came into our care, which meant that we weren't doing as good as we thought we were. And so we wrote that first strategic plan with the goal of increasing our save rate to 90%, which would classify us as a no-kill animal shelter. And everybody has strong opinions about no-kill language. But here's what's important to me, is that a 90% or better save rate indicates that that shelter is saving all the animals that can be saved. And that's important to us, is saving all the ones that can be saved. That's the reason why I work at the York County SPCA. That's the reason why people donate to us. That's the reason why people volunteer, is because they want to live in a community and work at a shelter that is saving all the animals that can be saved. So that's why we set the goal at 90%, because that's the organization we wanted to be. And so we wrote the plan, and 3 years later, we increased our save rate 43 percentage points to 95%, and we've stayed above 90% ever since 2022, which means that we've remained a no-kill animal shelter for quite a while now. I can't do the math. 5 years now, I guess that is. So the question is how did we do it, right? Well, the first part is you have to get a hold of your data, because the data will reveal to you where your largest gaps in your save rate. what groups of animals are dying the most? What are the most of them dying? And that's where, we have more demand on our services than services to go around. We have more demand on our resources than resources to go around. And so if we're having to pick and choose from our limited resources, where are we going to direct those resources? The obvious place you go is where you're going to have the most impact, which is saying where you're going to save the most number of animal lives. And so we did that. We looked at our gaps in our save rate. And what we learned was that cats were dying in huge numbers. People would bring in 40 cats a day and we'd euthanize 38 of them to make room for the next batch of incoming cats. So we'd be euthanizing another 20 cats on Tuesday and 30 cats on Wednesday and 40 cats on Thursday. And it was just to make room for the next group of cats. And there was no end in sight. And it was not only not good for animals, but also ruining us emotionally, the people who have to work there and who have to euthanize those animals who are perfectly healthy, right? And so we wanted that to stop. We needed to get a handle on our high euthanasia rates among the cat populations. And so we studied our data, and our data revealed that the kittens were dying at there was a 98% chance of mortality with kittens. And the reason why is because a kitten under 3 pounds can't be vaccinated. And its immune system is so compromised. And so it's they're just dying. And the shelter is filled with just germs that normal adult cats are vaccinated against, but kittens are not. And so what we first started doing was recruiting. We hired a kitten foster coordinator, and we started putting kittens into homes and get them out of the shelter, because a home environment is healthier than a shelter environment. And so then when we did that, we started to see our live outcomes skyrocket because the kittens weren't dying anymore. And then we implemented the community cat program, which is SNR and TNR, and that working cat program and other foster programs. And then you start seeing our cat save rate just skyrocket. And in fact, in that second year, our save rate jumped from 65% to 79% in a single year because of the community cat program. So that would be an example of one thing we did to start to turn things around, is get a handle on our data, look at what the data tells us to do, and then do those things, which is save cats, come on board a community cat program.
What would you say to someone who you're maybe having a conversation with, and they're telling you about a shelter in their community that they know and have had experience with that has a save rate like you guys had in 2019? How would you frame that conversation with them? Because just having this short conversation with you, I already know that you're not going to demonize that shelter, right? You're going to look to kind of educate that person and have a real conversation about what's going on, because certainly you didn't come into the York County SPCA and you didn't say, oh my God, you guys are killing 53% of the animals. I'm out of here. I'm going to go somewhere else that's not killing all these animals. So you're obviously not going to demonize that entity. So how would you frame that conversation that you would have with that person that's going, oh, my shelter is a problem?
Yeah, if I'm talking to a person who works at a shelter that has a high euthanasia rate or a low save rate, or if I'm talking to somebody who's, talking negatively about that shelter, here's what I would say first is, I would ask the question, why? Why does that shelter have a low save rate? Why did we have a 53% save rate? I'll tell you why it's not. It's not because those people are stupid or because they don't care. That's not the reason why they have a low save rate. The reason why they have a low save rate is because it's a hard problem to solve. That's why. So take our shelter, for example, in our community. So in York County, Pennsylvania, we have 72 municipalities, which is insane, right? That's a very Pennsylvania thing to have. In just one single county, we have 72 municipalities. That's crazy, and I have a strong opinion about it, but that's not this podcast. But my point is that we contract with almost all of them. So we have 65 contracts out of the 72 municipalities, and we basically serve the whole county. Okay. So that means that I'm obligating myself by contract to take them all in. We can't turn them away. Now we have an intake policy and intake protocols that guide how those animals come into our care. But at the end of the day, we have to do we have to take them in. And now sometimes we'll sterilize them and return them out into their home, right? That's that SNR. But the point is that they're going to be having a touch point into the SPCA. That's why I'm saying our intake was 2,700, but we're serving tens of thousands of animals and people, right? And that's because we're providing all these services to folks. So the first thing to realize is that the reason why shelters have high euthanasia rates is probably because it's a hard, like because they're having to take these animals in and there's just so much of them. And we are the only shelter for all of York County. They're all going to funnel into our building one way or another, thousands and thousands of animals each year. And so the first thing to remember is that it's a tough problem to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is that if anybody ever tries to shame an organization, like shame is going to get you nowhere, right? Shame is a great
Right.
way to get the person who you're talking to shut down and to push you out, right? So shame
Mm-hmm.
never gets anybody anywhere. All it ever does is divide a community. Like the only thing that shame accomplishes is shutting people down and dividing people, right? It doesn't bring you together. So just talking crap about a shelter isn't going to solve the problem. All it's going to do is like create drama in social media, which is probably like what that person is trying to accomplish, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
through their
Right.
shame tactics. Like so shame certainly isn't going to work. It's all it's going to do is get that person to shut down. So instead, what you want to do is just say, how can I help? What can I help you with? What is your greatest need? You know, and then like think about what skills and expertise do you bring to the table and then offer those expertise, right? So maybe you're good with data and you're like, hey, do you mind sharing your data with me and I can like help with interpretation? Or maybe you're like, I have a laundry room that could house 4 kittens, right? And it sounds like you probably have a high euthanasia rate among kittens. So I'd be happy to like be a kitten foster for you. Like there's like that's a more productive conversation than to shame people, especially without even trying to like open up a dialogue with them. So there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind.
So that actually leads me to one of the questions that I have because I remember saying this, and I know other people that have said this. How would you respond to somebody who says that they can't volunteer at a shelter because they find it too depressing?
I mean, if you're going to say that publicly on social media, that's not helpful. That's not a helpful comment, right? If
Hmm.
you're going to say that to people who work at a shelter, our reaction is going to be, "You're not being helpful," right? And like, why would you even say that to me? Because I work there. What are you trying to make me feel bad that I work there? You know. Um,
Right.
so I would just first of all say that's not really a useful comment to us. You know, we've got more demand on our resources than we have resources to go around. And if you're taking up space saying unhelpful things, then like, I don't know, what are you just trying to get attention for yourself? Like that's what, um,
Well, I guess my
and like,
question is if
well,
and if I may frame it a little differently, because I think maybe I said it in a little bit of a weird way. Like maybe they are interested in helping out, and maybe they
yeah,
actually do want to do something
uh,
positive, but maybe their perception of shelter work is that it's only depressing. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, and it does, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how do we bust that myth, right? How do we overcome that stereotype that a shelter is a sad place to be? We're trying to bust that myth at the York County SPCA, and one way that we're doing that is by doing shelter tours. I mean, I do a shelter tour at least once a day, if not multiple times a day. It's kind of my go-to move because we want to overcome the stereotype that a shelter is a sad place to be. But if that person refuses to go into if like I try to convince people to go on a tour with me and they just can't bring themselves to do it because they have this vision in their mind of a sad because they've watched too many ASPCA sad commercials with the beaten up dog behind the bars and it's sad and that's their
I
image of a
know.
shelter, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like that's not always true, right? And so just keep an open mind. And if I can't get that person on a tour, then I would say, well, you can support from afar. You can still be a donor. You can still do community projects for us. Like you can still do like for your birthday or for, like gather up supplies and donate those supplies to the organization. You can make snuffle mats and donate those, which is an enrichment. So, dog enrichment activity that people can make at home and then donate to the shelter to keep the dogs occupied and their minds engaged while they're in a shelter setting. You can share our social media and promote adoptable pets. Like there's still, or share our posts online and help us promote adoptable pets. There's still like plenty of ways for people to support from afar if they don't want to physically come into the building.
I mean, that's one of the things that I talk about a lot on here, both kind of myself, and then I talk to a lot of people in animal advocacy work, there's so many facets to it. Like to your point, if you're a data driven person and you like data, you don't have to walk into a shelter and go see the kennels in order to get an email with all the data to help them sort through where problem points are. You know,
Right.
you can help in a different way. You can
Yeah.
go for a smaller organization, maybe smaller than York County, you can pick up the laundry and you can do the laundry for them. So you could take a dog on a doggy day out, not necessarily have to go into the shelter. You can foster. So there's so many different avenues
Awesome.
in which you can volunteer that you don't necessarily have to have this preconceived emotional negative association with, and you can still really do some good.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, you nailed it.
So, how do you've been the executive director since 2019, and clearly you haven't had a moment where you're not thinking about the past of the York County SPCA and not planning for the future. How do you continue to do this work and not burn out? And what kind of advice would you give to anybody who's kind of deep in this work and is starting to maybe experience some of those symptoms of burnout?
Well, I'd want to know what's causing their burnout, right? So, and it depends on on your community and your shelter. So, a lot of what causes my team frustration is the negativity on social media. So, there's just like it's just like the amount of time it takes to create something, right? Like to create a program, a community cat program, right? It took me years to raise the money and to for my team to write the SOPs and to implement the programs, right? And to analyze the data. So the amount of time that it takes to create something versus the amount of time it takes to complain about something. The internet has totally disrupted this process. And so social
Right.
media makes it way too easy to have a platform to complain about things and to have an uninformed, non-data supported opinion about why people think a thing doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
And when they comment without being informed or having like given us the opportunity to respond or even reach out, then what that does is make the staff feel like that negativity doesn't help because our job is already hard, right? Like we are making tough decisions all the time. We're dealing with hoarding cases every other week with 70 cats in a trailer. You know, we're dealing with humane investigation where we're getting animals out of some of the worst imaginable possible, like cruelty and neglect situations. We're bringing them there and we're trying to our care and we're rehabilitating them, right? Like we're having to euthanize animals because modern medicine can't save that animal. It's a humane decision. So like our job is really hard and very emotional. And so when you're
Mhm.
already like working in that world and then you get this like negativity from social media, it can run us into the ground and make the team feel bad. And it's hard for me to watch them, do that. And I can't make them not be on social media. So that
Right.
would be so it's just so we think a lot about supporting ourselves and each other through that world. Um, Another thing that we do is we think a lot about work life balance. So the kind of person who gravitates towards this work loves animals, right? They are an animal lover. And this isn't just a job, right? This is a passion. We're mission driven people. And that type of person attracts like this work attracts a certain type of person who isn't just a regular worker. They're a mission driven worker. And so I have to require my people to take their paid time off and to go on vacation and to have a life outside of animal services and to encourage that life and to encourage work life balance because it's easy to just be consumed by this work. And so I have to like intentionally make my folks take the time off that they're entitled to and have earned. So those are like two things. And like we talk a lot about having a healthy relationship with social media and an online presence. We'll bring in instructors who are experts in compassion fatigue and will help us manage our compassion fatigue so that we don't burn out. But sometimes people who've been in it for a while need to step away. They just need to step away. And I want people to have a happy and healthy relationship with work. And I think a lot of us do now that we're getting better at managing compassion fatigue. But some people just aren't built that way. And so this emotional work isn't maybe a good fit for them. And so they have to rethink their career and maybe think about supporting in different ways, like through volunteering.
I'm just always interested in how someone who's dealing with it at the level and at the volume that you're dealing with it, like how you rectify that. Because, I I'm saving maybe a dozen animals a year as a foster. It's such a small number. Obviously, it's not nothing, and I'm not
Yeah.
discounting what I'm doing at all, but it's like a dozen as opposed to like 3,000. And so seeing it at that scale, I just wonder when you are dealing with the hoarding cases and you are dealing with the awful humane cases and the starvation and the abuse and the dog fighting and all those things that we know exist in so many communities across the country. I mean, how do you
Yeah.
sleep without nightmares? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how does
Yeah.
one kind of rectify that for themselves?
Yeah, I think that another part of it is thanks for elaborating on that too, and and I want to get a hold of that resource so I can bring it to my team because they're always looking for different
Hmm.
ways to support them. Another
Hmm.
part of it though is to remember that we're there for people's worst days and in their worst moments, and like when people have to surrender a pet to us, we really try hard in a proactive way to not judge people, but to give them an opportunity to share their story with us. So that way we can understand the nuance that led a people to make a really tough decision. And so we try to remember that we're only seeing like we're seeing bad things happen, but that doesn't represent the behavior of the majority of people, right? It's just that our job is to those negative things are going to be funneled to us. And so we have to remember that this isn't a reflection of humanity, right? This is just a small percentage of those animals, but that's the reason for our existence is to support those vulnerable pets. And so a lot of times, like we can just look at data and like talk about just basically have a conversation during all staff meetings and team meetings to like give our team perspective that this isn't the norm. We're just here for like on those pets or on those people's worst days. Yeah.
I think it's really hard. I think it's really difficult, because if you're in the world, you're in the world. Like, you know what's going on. You see these things. I'm part of like rehoming pages and lost and found pages and this and that. And to your point about the negativity of social media, it's this double-edged sword because it is negative and it is a dumpster fire in a lot of ways, but then in a lot of ways it allows people to connect and it allows things to get done in a positive way. I mean, I still follow York County SPCA and have for years. I see your guys' stuff all the time, but I think it's very difficult to be in that world and remind yourself that it's not a reflection of the entirety of humanity,
Right.
because when we
Right.
are talking about almost nearly 500,000 dogs euthanized every year, it does feel like it's a problem that's very easy to get buried underneath.
It you said it really well there. And but then again, I do see that like killing in shelters has diminished over the
Right.
long haul. So we're heading in the right direction. And I think the
Hmm.
more and more shelters that embrace progressive programs that embrace, that are data driven and that will look beyond their community borders and study best practice and take the risk of integrating best practice into their shelter. I mean, it's been really hard. Navigating that change is super difficult, but we're on the other side of it, and we're saving more animal lives because of it. So I think we feel good about our work. We know that we're saving all the animals that can be saved. So I sleep really well at night, and so do my team because we know we're well run, and so that gives us the peace of mind knowing that we're doing everything we can to give that animal that's coming through our door its best chance at a live outcome.
One of the things that I'm hearing in doing the podcast, I'm hearing two things that I think are really impacting, these save rates, and it's on the front end and it's on the back end. The first is managed intake, having conversations. I spoke to the director of No Kill at Best Friends uh, Animal Society, and she talked a lot about managed intake, and she talked a lot about having that conversation on the front end. Why are you surrendering your animal? Do you need resources? Do you need us to help pay for a spay? Do you need low cost vet care? Do you need pet food? Right? Can we get to kind of the bottom of the reason that you want to surrender this animal? Can we support you in a way that you didn't know that we could provide support in an attempt to not have the animal surrendered? Okay, well, you do still need to surrender the animal. Can we find a way to have you keep that animal until we do have an opportunity to find an adopter for it?
Yeah.
Or kind of on that front end, oh, you found a lost animal. can you foster this animal for us as opposed to bringing it into the shelter and taking up a kennel space? Do you have the
Yeah.
ability to do that?
Yep.
That kind of thing. And then
That's
on the
great.
back end, yeah, on the back end, I'm hearing a lot of rescues, and I think you alluded to this in the very beginning of our conversation. I'm hearing a lot of rescues and shelters talk about retention programs and making sure that animals can stay with families in a real way. So tell me about, obviously we talked about community cat, but are there any other retention programs that York County SPCA has that you'd like to tell us about?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And first of all, managed intake, the way I think about that is it's not managed intake, it's just smarter intake. So I try to I don't even like the word managed. I think of it as smarter intake because some people think managed intake means that you're just trying to invent a reason not to take in an animal so that you can achieve no
Right.
kill status. Like they're like, all you care about is being a no kill shelter. And I'm like, that's not it at all. You have not studied what managed intake is. All it is
Mm-hmm.
smart intake. It's asking questions, connecting people to and then when you ask questions, you learn things like you learn about what leads a person to surrender their pet, and then or what's going to give that stray pet its best chance at a live outcome, and then from there you can build programs. And so to answer your question, um, we have so about 70% of households in York County have a pet in them, and we're the only nonprofit that's serving the furry family member, right? And so there are for us, we have programs and we call them human service programs. And people are like, "What do you mean? You have what are human service programs doing at an animal shelter?" And we're like, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
human service programs exist at an animal shelter because most people view their pets as members of the family. Like, is anybody going to dispute that? I dare you to argue with me that I'm incorrect when I say that most people view pets as members of the family, right? And
Right.
so we have programs that keep the whole family united with their furry family member, and that's a human service program. So a reason that a person will surrender their pet to us is not because they're bad people or because they don't care. It's because their pet may be struggling with a life-saving medical issue that the family can't afford to have fixed, right? You go to the emergency vet and and they quote you $5,000 for some sort of life-saving surgery, and you can't afford $5,000. So people will surrender their pet to us knowing that we would provide the life-saving surgery so we can put them up for adoption. And it's heartbreaking to imagine that people are separating from their beloved furry family member due to income constraints. So we have this program called Karma that provides free or affordable life-saving medical care for pets coming from low-income households. So they bring their animal to us, we do the surgery, we reunite them with their pet. That prevents an unnecessary euthanasia, it prevents surrender, it keeps the whole family united with their pet. Another reason why people surrender their pet to us is because they're struggling with food insecurity. And if they're struggling to put food on their table, they're struggling to feed their animal, so they surrender their pet to us so that it can eat consistently. And again, we don't want people to separate from their family member because of income constraints, so we provide free pet food to anybody who makes a request. So we just give them the free pet food, they go on, and that prevents a surrender. So those would be like examples, and we have others of human service programs.
I didn't know about the Karma program with York County SPCA. I mean, that's massive to be able to provide life-saving care to these animals. I mean, I see it every day. A new GoFundMe goes up of, my animal needs this or my animal needs that, and I just simply can't afford it. And I am in the financial services space, and pet insurance is not yet perfect, and in many cases, it's not affordable for people. I mean, I've quoted the premiums. I know what we're looking at, and not everybody can qualify for things like care credit. So I think it's so great that you guys provide that service in York County.
Yeah, yeah, we're fortunate, and we squeeze those surgeries, so we always have to prioritize the shelter pets. But the medical
Right.
team tries to make time in their busy schedules when those emergency cases come to us.
So what I'm going to ask that again because I really would love your take on it. What do you think are the biggest issues
Oh,
that are facing animal rescue and welfare today?
yes, thank you. Well, I can speak to Pennsylvania. Okay, so
Okay.
I have a lot of opinions. I could answer this question in like 12 different ways. But here's the first thing that comes to mind:
Pick your
is
top like 11. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'll pick my number one. My number one is that I don't think most people most people may not realize that an animal shelter provides an essential service that ensures public health and safety. Like full stop.
Mm.
We provide an essential service. So when most people think about an animal shelter, they think of puppies, kittens, and adoption. And that's a really simplistic way of thinking about it. There's so much more, right? And we're also providing a government function service of ensuring public health and safety. And so in most states, and almost all the other states, all 49 of them, the government is engaged in this work to some extent, right? You'll typically have like a municipal, a city, or a county shelter. So it's a government built and administered animal shelter. And then the nonprofit community comes alongside and supports their work by relieving capacity or something like that. Or like in other states, you'll have government is funding the work to some extent, like they're subsidizing spay neuter, for instance. In Pennsylvania, there's not a single government run shelter. And the government has no legal obligation to engage in this work at all. So there's no financial support, which means that in Pennsylvania, we're providing a government function service with no government funding.
Hold on, I'm gonna stop you there real quick because that is in all the conversations I've had, including with Senator Pisitano, this has not come up yet. You're telling me that the only state without a government-run shelter is the state of Pennsylvania?
I'm
To
saying,
your knowledge?
well, no, here's exactly what I'm saying,
Okay.
is that
Okay.
that there's not a single government run shelter in all of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Full stop. That's a fact. And in almost all the other states, the government has a government shelter, right? And there's like 3 states that don't have like a technical government funded shelter, but the government has a legal obligation to fund those nonprofit shelters to some extent, right? So that means that their government's involved. So we're the only state where the government has no requirement to engage in animal sheltering services whatsoever. And that's crazy, So that means that
That is crazy.
yeah, so the government's relying on the nonprofit community to provide a basic government function service of ensuring public health and safety. And so that means that in Pennsylvania, we're requiring residents to hold 2 concepts in their head at once. I wear 2 hats. One is my government services hat that I'm doing all that work for free, right? Or my nonprofit hat. So you have to hold 2 concepts in your mind at once in Pennsylvania. Now, I contract with municipalities. I convince them to value our services and to get them to engage in a contract with me, but they have no legal requirement to do it. So there are many counties that have complete gap in service where their shelters are standing up for themselves and not giving away their services for free. And those municipalities refuse to contract with those shelters, right? So I have municipal contracts, but they're not required to engage with them. They only do it because I convinced them to do it. And it's a fight every year. So like those contracts that I signed represent 70% of our intake because we're obligating ourselves by contract to take those animals in, but they only represent 6% of our budget. So of the municipal contracts that I get fees for those services, they represent 6% of our budget, but 70% of our intake. So it's wildly out of balance, right? But just to be clear, there's not a single government-run shelter in all of PA, and the government has no legal obligation to engage in these services, although it's a government.
So how did we get this so wrong?
Yeah.
How is this? Where is this gap coming from? Was it something that we used to have and then was revoked? Is it something that other states put in motion and just Pennsylvania just never stepped up to the plate? What are we talking about here?
I don't know why the government doesn't participate in these services when it does in the other 49 states, but my best guess is that it's by tradition, it's by culture, it's a cultural thing in Pennsylvania. That's the best guess I have. And it's just, they've gotten away with it for so long and nobody has said anything. So another thing that I can talk about to this point is like, what is an example of the government function services that shelters provide? And what's an example of the nonprofit activities that we do? So quickly, I'll give you those. So example number 1 is spay neuter. We're controlling the pet population growth rates through an aggressive spay neuter program. I have one of the most productive spay neuter clinics in the country in the York County SPCA. We just won an award for it. One of my vets spayed and neutered 13,262 dogs and cats in a single year. Example number 2, we're vaccinating animals for zoonotic diseases like rabies, which is transferred to humans, would be deadly. Example number 3 of the government function services that we provide is policing. I employ a police officer. He has a badge, a gun, can serve a warrant. He's sworn in. We're enforcing Title 18, animal cruelty and neglect, which is in the Crimes Code book. We are police. Like, it doesn't get any more government than enforcing the law, but we're self-funding this position at a 501 at a nonprofit organization. That's crazy that that's happening. And then example number 4 is the most basic of them all. It's the thing that all communities have to address in terms of keeping the community safe and healthy, which is intake, shelter intake. So one way or another, an animal is going to find its way into the community. It's going to be born in the community. It's going to be hit by a car and like actively dying in the community, and it needs a place to go. There could be a dangerous dog running out into traffic, causing accidents or attacking people. Like these animals need a place to go. We can't just be leaving them out in the community. And that place is the shelter, right? So like the government has to provide clean drinking water. They have to remove trash. They have to fill potholes, and they have to do something for these animals in our community. And so that something is bring the animal to the shelter. So it's crazy so those are like examples of government function services that we provide. All the other things that you know about that I've talked about on this interview, I would say fall into the nonprofit stuff that we do. So all the things that we do that go above and beyond to save an animal life, I would argue that that's our nonprofit work. All those human service programs that keep people and pets together, I would argue that's nonprofit work, right? Because all the government has to do is ensure public health and safety. They do not have to save all the animals that can be saved. We choose to do that on the nonprofit side.
I don't even know what to say. I'm like processing this in my head because again, like in the last year that I've been doing this, my foster just got a little restless and now she's looking for attention.
She's
Maybe she'll
she's
she'll
she's
make an appearance.
she's riled up
Oh,
because of what I've just said.
I know. She's like so disappointed in the state of Pennsylvania right now. She's a
Well,
cutie though.
so I would
Uh,
I would say like I would wave a caution flag, and I would say like
yeah,
let's not beat up on our elected officials, right? Because it takes education. Like I like not a lot of people have said this before or framed it this way before. So the way that I'm talking
right.
about these things and the fact that I'm saying this is new information to elected officials. And so we're just now like starting to explain how animal services works in Pennsylvania. And that's on us, the shelter, the professionals. Like I'm a professional in this industry, and it's on me to educate our community about how things work and then to advocate for ourselves to make the world a better place. So we're only just now explaining things in the way that I'm doing it for you, and it's resonating with people. And so now we need to seek support for our services.
So then how do we then if what you're saying, don't beat up on the elected officials, let's do a better job. How do we support, trying to make a change? How do we just ask elected officials to, bring it to the table? Do we ask them to educate themselves more? Do we educate them? Like what does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, before everybody goes storms the Capitol at Harrisburg here in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
Um,
please.
yeah, don't do that.
That's
Like
that's
like
still got
don't
trauma associated
don't
with it.
yeah
Storming the Capitol.
Yeah, like don't yeah, really in Harrisburg. But like don't do that, because we don't need a bunch of people saying a bunch of different things and mixing the message and confusing people, all right? That doesn't do any good.
Okay.
What we need to do is be organized and coordinated on a single message. That's more effective. And so what does that mean? You need an association. So do shelters and rescues have an association? Not really. We have a lot of associations that are advocating for animal rights, but like a lot of people confuse animal rights with animal services. Like animal rights is like advocating for a law that says don't do bad things to animals. Animal services is what I'm talking about. That's the actual infrastructure of animal sheltering. That's the like government function work, right? Of ensuring public health and safety. Animal rights, laws that say don't do bad things to people, but you need somebody to enforce the law for that law to be effective. That's the infrastructure of animal services. That's what I do. That's my job as the shelter guy, right? So that's what we don't have that right at all, right? We have laws on the books, but I'm self-funding the guy who's enforcing the law, right? So we need to
Mhm.
get the basic infrastructure right. And the only way that we do that is through a statewide coordinated effort, which is what the purpose of an association is to advocate. So I am starting up an association for the state of Pennsylvania with my fellow colleagues. It's called Federated Humane Society of PA. It used to be an association and it went defunct, and we're restarting it. And so we're sort of working behind the scenes to get it get it going again, to get the house in order. And then eventually we will promulgate advocacy priorities for shelters. And then that's when we will come to people to get engaged to help us advocate for these priorities that we've identified. But we're not there yet. So we're just trying to get organized. We're trying to start an association. eventually we'll identify advocacy priorities, and then we will start asking people to help support those priorities by then writing letters and calling people and showing up to meetings and advocating for those priorities. So we're incubating that association out of the York County SPCA for the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, then my commitment as someone who hears about things like this and decides that she's so type A, she wants to do something about it, right? Because that's who I am as a person with this wriggly dog on my lap. My commitment is that once you're out of that incubation stage and you are talking about, making this effort known to the public, let's have you back on. Let's have you
Okay.
talk about you said the Federated
Yeah.
say it again, please, for me?
Yep, sure. Yeah, so it's the Federated Humane Society of Pennsylvania. So federated is a very common term that animal shelters use to say association. There's lots of federated whatever of Virginia or Massachusetts or whatever, right? So yeah, but that's what it's called. And I would love to come back whenever we have our act together. Like we're still in that baby stage of growing up, but once we're grown up and we have our advocacy priorities, that's when we're going to need to engage people, because then we'll be coordinated and can be effective because we'll be organized and we'll be in unison with one another.
Well, I'm so glad that somebody as motivated, as educated, and as organized as yourself is, taking it upon themselves to say, hey, I see a gap here, just like you did in 2019 with the 53% save rate. I see a gap here, and I want to take steps to figure out how we can bridge that gap and how we can make things better for the people and the animals of Pennsylvania.
Man, that was a great callback. Yeah, I actually, I've never made that connection, because you're right. When I first started, we were looking for gaps in our save rate. And now, what is the number one threat to our save rate right now? Well, our number one threat is we do a government function job with no government support. We're not even validated as providing an essential service ensuring public health and safety. So that's our number one gap right now. To me, that's our number one threat to our save rate.
I have a very strong background in sales. It's my job to make connections for people that they might not have already thought about. So, what is something, you already kind of answered this, but is there anything else that you'd like to leave listeners with that you think is something that is important for people to know about animal rescue and animal welfare? Obviously, you already kind of blew my mind today. I'm sure you did blow other listeners' minds with talking about those government services not being supported by government entities. But, tell me anything else that you'd really like to let people know about.
So I told you that I do a shelter tour almost every day. My goal is to connect people to our work. I love doing tours. I love showing off our work. I like seeing is believing, right? People have this imagination of what they think an animal shelter is, but until you see it, you really don't know. And so at the end of every tour, I have the same call to action. It's been the same call to action for 7 years now. And so I'll give you my call to action that I give at the end of every shelter tour, which is that you now know some stuff. Right? Your listeners know some stuff. They know that human service programs exist at an animal shelter. They know that we do a government function job with no government funding. I've given 4 examples of the government function services that we provide, and I've differentiated those from our nonprofit activities. We talked about what a community cat program is. Your listeners know some stuff. So the best thing that they can do for me and for other shelters is to spread good information and positivity. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So the best thing that people can do is share the right information, and also don't contribute to the negative dialogue that's out there. Contribute to a positive dialogue. And if you hear people say don't bring your pet to the York County SPCA, they'll just kill it. You could be actually, they have a 95% save rate, which means they're saving all the animals that can be saved, right? That's useful to us. So that would be my first thing that I would say is, just spread good information and positivity out in the world. We need more of it. And then when it comes to that, I'd love to come back on, and talk to you about our advocacy priorities. And then my next call to action would be help us spread that message.
Well, and that actually brings me to, one of the things that I am going to start doing a better job of. But one of the ways that you guys can help Stephen in spreading good information is you can literally share this episode. This podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere where you get your podcasts. And all you have to do is click on the share button. And I am sure that everybody listening to this episode has one friend or one family member in mind that they are thinking of when they hear this episode. Maybe they're in Pennsylvania, or maybe they're doing this kind of work, or maybe they're having some of the same concerns in their state and in their area. Just share this episode with that friend, because that's how you're going to spread this good information, is by sharing it directly from the stores like Stephen.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So this is a great time for us to go ahead and do a foster spotlight. So today, Stephen brought to us Arrow. I am actually going to go ahead and share my screen. So for those of you following along on YouTube, you are going to see a picture of probably one of the prettiest speckled brindle dogs I've seen in a while, and her name is Arrow. And Arrow has been in York County SPCA for, unfortunately, such a long time that her adoption fee is all the way down to $80. And it's not because she's not an incredible dog. My guess is, some of those standard stereotypical things that happen, where Arrow is a senior, she's a senior girl, and Arrow is a darker colored dog, and black dogs often ends up getting overlooked. Some of those things are probably plaguing her, because she is really a beautiful girl. And, some of the traits that are highlighted on the website about Arrow is that she's affectionate, she's dog social, she's laid back. I mean, come on, people, who doesn't say that they want a chill dog? She loves food and treats, and she's outgoing and really playful. So, when we talking about Arrow on the Foster Spotlight, Stephen, you brought up another really great piece of information for anyone considering Arrow to know. And what was that? If you can refresh me on that.
We won a grant that allows us to provide all the blood work for free to anybody who adopts a long-term resident, which we defined as over 3 months. So if an animal's been in our care for over 3 months, that's a long-term resident, and they come with all that blood work panel, like the full panel. You get all the health information of that dog for free. So that also comes with her, because we want people to have the peace of mind knowing the health status of that dog. And if there is an issue, they at least know about it and can have a conversation with us about what they need to do for Arrow to keep her healthy.
So, we can't, diminish a dog's value strictly to monetary value. I think that goes against everything you and I believe in. But let's talk about the money side of it for a second. This is a dog that now your adoption fee for her is going to be $80, which is less than what I pay for Wi-Fi in my house every single month. And then now I'm getting what's a few $100s worth of blood work right up front with adopting this new dog. So I know what I'm getting myself into as far as health is concerned. So you just have an opportunity to adopt a long-term resident, a senior dog that's looking to live the rest of her life in comfort. And you're doing it with like your full eyes open about what's going on with this dog, and really starting off on the best foot forward, it sounds like.
Yeah. And because this dog has been in foster home, that says that she probably wasn't thriving in a shelter environment. So whenever our dogs demonstrate stress in the kennel, we want to put them into a foster home. Well, because they're in a foster home, and your audience probably knows this better than most, is that we get reliable information about the actual characteristics of that dog. We know that their true self, their true personality doesn't really shine in a shelter setting, but they do start to come out of their shell when they're in a foster home. So all this information in her bio is probably like very reliable information because she's been in a foster home. So whatever we share about Arrow is going to be reliable because she's been in a foster home. Plus you get all the medical background too that we're providing with that. And all that comes for that $80 adoption fee.
So I will, as always, guys, I will share Arrow's profile as a link in the show notes, and so that you can go check her out there. But Stephen, can you tell listeners how they can continue to connect with the York County SPCA?
Sign up for our newsletter. So if you go to our website and you scroll down to the bottom, there's an opportunity to sign up for our e-newsletter. It goes out maybe once a month or once every 3 weeks. So you're not going to get, spammed every day or anything like that. It's a really good newsletter. Follow us on social media. We have a really good social media presence. That would be another great way to connect with us. And you can see how we're talking about our animals there. So yeah, I just e-newsletter and social media. And that's at, awesome. I guess I should Wonderful. Say it. So that's the YCSPCA.org. That's YC as in York County, SPCA.org.
And if you're in the York County area and you're looking for something to do on a rainy day, go take a shelter tour and you're going to meet Stephen probably, and he's going to show you all around, and he'll be excited to show you the awesome side of this life-saving work that he and his team are doing every single day.
Yes, yes. And if it's not me, we have a community engagement manager, and she does tours all day too. So it'll be one of us.
Well, Stephen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast today. It's so clear how incredibly busy you are and how important the work that you do is. So I really appreciate the time that you've taken with me today. And I really look forward to hearing more about the association, the Federation, and its progress and the impact that it's going to have in Pennsylvania. I mean, honestly, I'm so excited to talk to you more about that.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm pumped too. I can't wait to talk about it more publicly, but we're just getting our feet under us right now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So thank you again for your time today. And as a reminder to my listeners, share this episode with somebody that you're thinking about. If you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it, please make sure you do that. And I just learned that leaving a review for the podcast is one of the best ways that you can help other people find me. So if you just have about 30 to 45 seconds to leave a review, even if it's a negative one, I will take it and I'm happy to hear it. So I'll take the engagement. But thank you, Stephen, for your time today. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in the York County community. And I just want to remind everyone to be kind to yourselves and be kind to animals. Have a wonderful day.